Sox in the basement.
If I look like I'm moving gingerly on the YouTube video, and of course, most people listen to the audio for Sox in the Basement. They're getting it through any podcast player, soxinthebasement.com, anywhere podcasts can be found. But some people like to watch the video for some reason. And the main complaints are always, I keep my microphone in front of my face too much, and the lighting's terrible. And that's because I'm a radio guy. You're just going to have to deal with it. I'll get better. I promise. When I have the time to make this more professional looking, I will. But until then, you may be watching it still and see I'm moving a little gingerly, Ed. And that's because I started going back to the gym. And I said, I'm 48 years old. I got to be in better shape. And I signed up for some personal training. And the she-devil that was assigned to me, that's the only way I can describe her, is trying to kill me. She's 4'9", 4'10", and it's an hour-long session. We went 2.5 hours on Saturday. As I sit here on a Monday recording for Tuesday, I can't get my arm higher than this, like shoulder level. I can't do it, Ed. I'm a mess.
Well,
I'm a mess.
yeah.
Now, this is what happens when you have muscle atrophy because you haven't worked out in years. But she's trying to murder me. At one point, I actually looked at her and I said, I have to go to church tomorrow morning. And she goes, why? And I said, because if I go to hell, something that looks just like you will be waiting for me with this machine. And that's how I feel right now. So if I'm ginger, if I'm moving around a little gingerly, if I look like I'm in pain, it's because I am in pain. Because I am an out-of-shape mess. And she is determined to get me back into shape. So she's going to kill me, or I'm going to be a Greek god in the next 6 months.
So eventually you're going to want to go to full video, probably shirtless.
Oh, yeah.
And
I mean,
yeah,
if it works out the way I think she intends it, it'll be shirtless Sox in the Basement all summer long.
Well, I will be sure to be animated for that as opposed to in real life.
Yeah, you have to be shirtless too. If I get ripped, then you have to be next to me shirtless so we can see the before and the after pictures in real time.
Right. That's a great way to turn people off. You will have to wear sunglasses if I take my shirt off, however, because the glare coming off of your screen will be such that you may in fact go blind.
Speaking of plans, though, speaking of like you're starting off something, it might be a little painful. Just plans in general. I think Chris Getz has a plan. I really do. Everybody's like freaking out over the fact that Mike Tauchman was non-tendered. I don't know why. Here's the thing. It's not because the White Sox can't afford $2.5 million in arbitration, which was his projection. It's not because the payroll is going down, as I've read some people try to say. That's not the case. When I hear Chris Getz at the GM meetings talk about the idea that he wants to improve his corner infield, his corner outfield, his starting pitching, and his relief pitching, when we're seeing quotes that suggest that's what the focus is, when we're hearing the names of guys that can play first base and corner outfield already being bandied about as possible destinations or possible acquisitions, and the White Sox could be a destination for them as a free agent, what non-tendering Mike Tauchman tells me is you need to make room on your 26-man roster, and why would you give him $2.5 million? And make him an everyday player on your major league roster if your intention is to upgrade over Mike Tauchman. He's not a bad baseball player. There were positives that he did for you, but this is one of the things we talked about months ago. The idea that there's going to be a few eggs broken. There's a few guys that you kind of like. There's a few people that you're like, he's not that bad of a hitter. It's a pretty good baseball player, but you're going to have to improve if you want to take the next step and get yourself out of the basement of the American League Central. And so if you want to improve in the corner outfield and you're stuck with Andrew Benintendi, because now we know that he has an Achilles issue, so he's not movable, and he's still got $30 million over the next 2 years. You're trying to move Robert. I really believe that you're willing to move him if you get the right offer. You just went out and got this outfielder, this young outfielder we talked about in the last show, that could be the heir to the outfield, or at least is going to be one of the guys in the mix to make your outfield. You've got Braden Montgomery coming eventually to be a right fielder. Why wouldn't you go out and get yourself somebody who adds power to your lineup that can play a corner outfield position? And if Montgomery comes up and the kid that's the backup to Robert, what is his last name? Pereira? Am I saying his name right?
Everson Pereira. Yeah.
I have to remember all the new names. This is always a problem in the offseason, me learning all the names, right? But if that guy works out, these are all, first of all, good problems to have. But if you go get yourself a corner outfield guy, if you go get yourself a player that could also stand at first base if there's no more room in the outfield, but adds power, that's something that they're probably looking for here in this offseason. And here's the other thing. What if he's going out and he's going to sign that guy, and the idea is, all right, if Montgomery's ready by July, I could flip that guy and put Montgomery in right field and acquire more talent with the guy that I acquired on the 1 or 2 year deal that I won't need anymore because Montgomery comes up. Tauchman doesn't fit in any equation, no matter what Chris Getz is thinking of right now. If he's looking to improve his team, Mike Tauchman coming back would have told you it's going to be status quo, it's going to be business as usual, and they're not going to make a lot of moves. Mike Tauchman being non-tendered made me believe even more that we're going to see additions. Their payroll currently is $21 million lower than last year in the projections. That's where they're at right now, according to Spot Track and according to Baseball Reference. And that's taking into account all the pre-arbitration guys eventually getting paid. Like, just the estimates for what all the pre-arb young players are going to get. Everybody on the 40-man roster, the minor leaguers, all this stuff. Everywhere they got to spend money. They're $21 million less at this point than they were at the end of the season. So there's room that he's created for himself with a cheap owner. And if that cheap owner actually gave him like a 10% increase or something like that, because they keep talking about how they have a number, but it's fluid. He's creating room right now, not only on his roster, but in his payroll, to now go out in the offseason and make changes to his team, Ed.
Look, Mike Tauchman as a veteran outfielder, if you're worried that the White Sox aren't going to bring anybody in, it's a valid concern that they're not going to bring anybody in. But that's because they just traded for a guy who is a top prospect, who is major league ready, has really nothing left to prove in the minors. Okay, they're going to have to fix his swing a little bit. They have to do some work, and that's Pereira. But you don't trade for the guy who is, not a guy that you're going to stash in the minors. You got to put him on the 40-man. You don't trade for this guy if you don't think that he's going to be someone who's going to compete for a job. Okay. Yes, Brooks Baldwin exists. Okay. Yes, he is there.
But I don't think that's the plan.
Well, but it could be the plan to the extent that you sit there and you go, if we're not going to be able to move Robert, Pereira, and eventually Montgomery are the answers in the outfield, and you don't want to pay Mike Tauchman to go from veteran leader at the start to disgruntled guy on the bench, or even he's not necessarily a guy that you trust to be flippable at the deadline because he gets hurt. He's old. Okay. That's the other thing you got to remember about Mike Tauchman. Not a young dude anymore. Okay. He's an old vet, and you can get old veteran guys like Michael Taylor on the uber cheap. You can get him for the league minimum. You don't have to pay him. Just because Tauchman was under arbitration doesn't necessarily mean he's part of the future plans or worth tendering. So there is a possibility that, yes, the White Sox could be very well walking into the season going, we've got Luis Robert Jr. that we're not going to move right now. We've got Everson Pereira that we want to give a chance to. And eventually Braden Montgomery is going to come and take one of these spots. And we're not going to pay a guy to be a placeholder when we have guys that can be placeholders, or when we can do it off of non-tender, not non-tenders, but non-roster invitees and things like that. We can find a placeholder until May or June whenever they're going to bring up Montgomery. I do though think that there is much more of a thought process here, that either Chris Getz has had some productive preliminary trade talks going into the winter meetings, and he has an idea of who might be or what type of players might be coming back to him in certain trades, or that he has identified all of the potential outfield candidates, all the potential first base candidates, and has looked at it and gone, there's a couple of guys out there that I think I would want for not just this year, but for a couple of years, and maybe those are the guys that Chris Getz tries to get the 2-year and an option contract on, so that there's not as much pressure on Pereira, there's not as much pressure on Montgomery, and you're not anointing him. But those are the two routes you can go, and I tend to agree with you. I tend to believe the latter. I think Chris Getz has identified better talent. He's identified guys that have a better track record than Mike Tauchman, who, again, nice player, spent a lot of time on the shelf last year, spent a lot of time on the shelf the year before with the Cubs, not an Iron Man, not necessarily a guy that's got any value. Somebody else might have more value. And that somebody might even be Luis Robert Jr. Or, maybe it is something where Lenyn Sosa's going somewhere, but there are outfield prospects or there are already major league outfielders that are coming back for Lenyn Sosa because that's what he's looking to fill.
Why settle for less when your legs deserve the best? Not all compression stockings are created equal. When it comes to preventing DVT, easing edema, managing varicose veins, Jopes stands out above the rest, and they are available at Hyatt Home Medical Equipment. Backed by decades of medical expertise, superior comfort, and proven durability, wide range of styles and compression levels, and trusted by physicians worldwide. You want to go out and get these. And here's the thing. Pharmacies and online shops rarely keep them in stock, but Hyatt Home Medical Equipment has them right now with expert fitting for the perfect size and guidance from a team you can trust. Learn all about how Hyatt can get you the best in compression stockings at hhme.com. I got a listener mail. I know we've been doing these lately. I love the fact that we're doing these now because people really react. Like they're really excited about sending us stuff. Sean sent us something. Sean wrote, actually, as a past two-time commenter, I feel obligated to email you with the rush of emails you've been receiving lately. There has been a rush. And we don't read them all because there's just too many of them. First, I'm a lifelong Sox fan, originally from South Bend, now living in Ohio. That being said, I go to the Cork because of the show every time I go to a game. Thank you very much, Cork and Carry at the Park, the official home of Sox in the Basement. My question is, do you think the Sox will sign a character guy this offseason? With Mike Tauchman and Michael A. Taylor gone, who will fill this role? If they move Robert Jr. or Benintendi, there will be zero veterans, and they have never been leaders in the first place. F. Jerry, long live Justin? I do that because there's a question mark for Justin Ishbia. Sean in Ohio. Again, thank you for your signature at the end of it. That's how you're supposed to say it. Okay. They do write out the whole word, which I love. But I don't want to put the swearing on the podcast. People listen with their kids. People listen with their kids. I always wanted this to be something you can have on the background while you're taking the kids to school. So I'm not going to say it. But although there is some kid right now going, "What does F mean, Dad?" Because I have them. They know what it means, and they know not to say it if they're anything like in my house. As far as character guys, I think what he's really trying to say is like veteran leadership. I think that's probably the better way to kind of phrase that. But essentially what he's saying is, well, who's going to walk around the locker room and kind of keep the young guys together? Here's the thing.
I don't know. You need that.
Some of these young guys kind of have those traits already.
Miguel Vargas.
Edgar Carroll. An absolute commander in the field. I think he's a commander in the locker room as well. You remember when he's not up there right now, but I don't know if he ends up making the team. I still think it makes perfect sense to carry three catchers so that you can get as many at bats as you can for Caro and Teal, because one of them would be the DH, and let Corey Lee sit in there on the bench. Okay. And even him, remember when he was very vocal in his first year up here, and everybody's like, what's this rookie doing? He was being a leader. He was pointing out there were problems and that people had to get their act together. You may have a few of those guys right now on this team, but I do get the idea of bringing in a veteran. And again, I go back to what we were talking about here right at the beginning of the show. I think there's veterans coming. I truly believe that Chris Getz is going out to get himself a corner outfielder that hits home runs, or a corner infielder that hits home runs, or at least somebody that's going to come in there that he can put in some top 5 spot in the order to add to his offense, and is an upgrade over what he has on his team currently. I don't think he's clearing the salary that he has cleared if he's not going to spend it. I don't think their payroll is lower in 26 than it was in 25. I think that's a disaster for the team as a franchise as a whole. And you know my opinion on Jerry Reinsdorf, and I just can't even fathom the idea that he would look at Chris Getz and say, we're going to lower it more. I can't even fathom that.
I can fathom that.
You can fathom it?
Oh, I can fathom that.
I mean, like I can't even believe that that's true. I mean, it would be bad business, terrible PR. It would continue to cement him as one of the worst baseball owners in history, who just got lucky with a World Series.
Well, it would cause a work stoppage, is what it would cause. I mean, it would be a catastrophe if Jerry did that. The Players Association, they might show up with torches and pitchforks.
I do think that he's at least getting to spend what he spent last year. I believe he's got at least $21 million in space to play with. I hope he's got more than that. He should have $30 to $40 million to spend, honestly. His number, at a bare minimum, he should have $40 million to go out and spend in free agency. And that's not a huge payroll increase. And that just would give him the things that he needed to improve his team a little bit, to compete next year, to give support to the young players so that they're not putting everything on their shoulders. That would help with development. He really does need that much space. Go out and get yourself a starting pitcher. Look, this rotation right now, I think it's really funny. If you go to roster resource fan graphs and you look at what the projected 5-man rotation of the White Sox is, that's not what it's going to be. I can't believe that that's what it would be. Shane Smith and Davis Martin are the only two real pitchers you have on the staff right now. They're the only two guys that I believe are starting pitchers that have a role immediately in 2026. Nobody else has earned an automatic spot in that rotation. Right now, the projection is that Burke and Cannon, along with Duncan Davitt, would round out the 5. He's going out and getting a pitcher. It may not be a guy at the top of the list, but he's going to go out and get a pitcher. He may add 2. And there's going to be competition from some of the guys down in the minors. And I think Tanner McDougal's got an excellent chance of finding his way in there at some point during the season. And so I don't believe that what you see right now is what you're going to get. I think what you do is just strip things down before free agency and the offseason really get going, because you're going to add, and now you've made the room to add.
There's going to be some veterans out of necessity on here. The question was, are there going to be character guys? Are there going to be guys that are brought in just for leadership qualities? And the answer to that, I think, is going to be no. I think it's a consideration. I think if Chris Getz is weighing 2 guys who are of equal talent, and one guy's known to be a good clubhouse guy and the other guy's known to be a pain in the ass, he's going to choose the clubhouse guy every time. But I don't think he's going to view it as the veterans need to come in and be the vocal leaders. He doesn't need Crash Davis on this team, but what he needs is some veterans who can go out and be professional, go about their business, and help support the young guys. Okay, it's not character, it's not the clubhouse stuff. Winning helps the clubhouse stuff. Okay, being competitive helps the clubhouse stuff. Having relievers, having starters that can keep you in games, having, a first baseman that can catch the ball and field his position well, which they don't have right now because, I'm sorry, I watched Lenine Sosa play first base. He's got the wrong foot on the bag half the time he's trying to catch the ball. He looks like when my daughter's playing first base in her softball league. She's 8 years old, okay? The footwork isn't there. The guy needs help in the field. He needs a first baseman, a real legitimate first baseman. And Tim Elko was never going to be the solution for those of you who are crying over Tim Elko.
This is why you kept hearing the Ryan O'Hearn thing, which by the way,
exactly.
Which by the way, when you look at the wins above replacement of all first basemen that are currently available in free agency over the last 2 years, their combined wins above replacement, Ryan O'Hearn ranks second behind Pete Alonso on the available free agents that are out there. And what is he doing? He's kicking the tires on him already because he knows he needs to make some kind of addition. He may not be the perfect guy, and that may not be who he ends up with. But when you see the moves he's making, he's clearing space. He's moving Tauchman out of the way, and he's saying, "Hey, I might go get a guy that can play corner outfield and also stand at first base."
And that's what we're talking about, though. Okay, is if it's a corner outfielder and he's neutral in the clubhouse. All right. But he's a guy that's going to go out and he's going to play just about every game. We're good. Okay. We're golden. Right. That's what he needs. He needs a first baseman that'll go out there and play every game, more or less. Okay. Maybe you get a Kyle Teal up there, or, Edgar Caro, Corey Lee, somebody who's, backing him up, platooning with him, whatever. But I think he feels like he's got his character on this team based on last year. I feel like he's got the leadership that he wants in Will Venable and his coaching staff. And so the veterans help. They do, but I think their assistance is 1,000% more about production on the field And I think a lot of the veteran help is going to come in the bullpen and the starting rotation more so than out on the field. And that's primarily because, frankly, like you said, they have two pitchers. They have two starting pitchers. Okay, Duncan Davitt can compete for a job with Jonathan Cannon and Sean Burke and Smith and Schultz and whoever. But they need at least one or two guys that are proven commodities that they know are going to go out there and at least give them a mediocre 6 innings every single time out. And it's good enough to sit there and say, hey, Colson, hey boys, go and score some runs and let's get a win off of this. Even if it is, Adrian Hauser on the Rays as opposed to Adrian Hauser on the White Sox.
Sox in the Basement listeners trying to make the most of your money. Give a call to Tom Walsh, your Edward Jones financial advisor. Located on the corner of 111th and Kedzie, but serving the Chicagoland area, Tom has a get-to-know-you approach and a do-the-right-thing attitude. He's been doing this for decades. It's all about knowing your options when you're investing and planning for your retirement. No matter what stage you are at, it costs nothing to check in with Tom. Give Tom Walsh, your Edward Jones financial advisor, a call today, 773-779-0023. Edward Jones, member SIPC. And the thing is, you look at the Tauchman move, and you look at, the fact they moved on from a guy that was $2.5 million. And like I said, he's making some room right now in his payroll. And then you look at another guy that got non-tendered in Austin Hayes, and you ask yourself, well, would I want to go out and pay what his market value is about $5 million? And I think he hit 16, 17 home runs last year. I don't know if he was even around for the whole year. He might project out. Yeah, he might project out to be in over 20. Again, I worry about the White Sox going after guys that get hurt because, they've already had that problem with too many guys that get hurt. That's one of the reasons why Luis Robert Jr. is a specimen. But when you actually look at what he actually gives you, it's not the same because of all the time that's missed. But I just look at what's available out there. There's a lot of guys with reasonable values out in free agency. And you can do this yourself. You can go to Spot Track and you can bring up the free agent tracker and you can see the market value and the expected amount of money that player could get in the open market. And it's not going to end up exactly that way. It all depends on their agent and what other free agents fall and what other guys are going to sign for in the first couple months is going to affect the market for everybody. But at least gives you something to play with and kind of there's outfielders out there that are upgrades over Tauchman. There's first basemen that are out there that are clear upgrades over Lenny Sosa. And you could go get one of each, one of those corner outfielders, and get yourself that first baseman. And you could still go out and get yourself some relief pitching. And you could still go get yourself a veteran starter to throw in there as the third pitcher for sure that's going to be in this rotation and make it a little bit less competition because you don't want to be looking for 3 spots. And you can do that with about $30 million. None of it's going to be flashy, but you could do it. You could keep the payroll number down to where Jerry wants it and you could still make changes. I think that's what he's doing. That's why I was encouraged by seeing the non-tender of Tauchman. And Tim Elko, look, we talked about on the show a couple of weeks ago. He did himself no favors by not getting the surgery immediately for the injury. Instead, he tried to play through it. A lot of people think that was admirable. Maybe he thought if I work through what I'm going through medically, maybe I can get myself back to the majors because I'm never going to get another chance again. But now he's not going to be ready for the start of the year. So that's why they didn't tender him. He's not even going to be ready for the start of the year. He didn't do enough at the major league level, and he's not going to be ready at the start of the year. So that's why he's gone. And what is Chris Getz that I always want my general manager to be? Cutthroat. He doesn't care if he drafted you, if he got you in a trade, if you're somebody that the year before he was saying positive things about. If you don't work out, he moves on from you. That's what I've always wanted my general manager to do. He doesn't hold on. You get a little frustrated when you saw Andrew Vaughn get chance after chance after chance, but you know what? At least he moved on. He was only there for a short amount of time after Chris Getz took over as a general manager. And then Chris Getz said, this is not working. I have no ties to this person. I'm moving on. So that's why I feel like he can be creative in the offseason. That's why I have a belief, and it may be misplaced, and it may be wrong, And it may be just hope from a fan who continues to get older and never knows when he's going to see the next really good White Sox team that he can truly believe in. He sees some sparks, he sees some young players that he's excited about, but he's just not sure when the organization's actually going to put their money in and put their best foot forward and act like a team that's in the third biggest market in the country. But I'm hopeful. He gives me a little bit of hope when he makes these little moves. These little moves show that he's like, all right, Mike Tauchman, thank you for your service. I think I can do better. Good. Because there's nothing that says he can't bring it back later. You know what the old regime would have done? They would have kept him. They would have kept him around. Well, we know who he is.
They would have extended him.
We're going to keep him.
Yeah, I mean, you look at Mike Tauchman, and then you look at J.J. Bleday, who gets let go by the wherever they're housed A's. And here's a guy that last year had some struggles, but his minor league numbers in his career are really pretty solid. And his minor league numbers last year were 353 with a 981 OPS when he went down to Vegas. And when he was up in the majors, he was struggling. But in 2024, at age 26, he had a year where he had 243 with 20 homers in the Coliseum. And if you sit there and you go, okay, maybe Ryan Fuller sees something there. Maybe they want to roll the dice on a younger player, a guy that's more durable, better fielder, and left-handed bat who's got more power than Tauchman's ever shown. Here's a guy that's an obvious candidate, right? There's plenty of options out there. Even if Chris Getz has to go a little bit cheaper, there's always options. And a guy in his 30s just is not necessarily going to be it. And maybe it comes down to, we don't know behind the scenes, maybe Tauchman was a little disgruntled last year. Maybe Mike Tauchman doesn't really like being on a team where he's not
going
not going to win anything because he's running out of years here. So if there was grumblings, if he was a little irritated, okay, if he didn't like losing playing time to Brooks Baldwin,
or if he has a post regular season meeting with the general manager and he tells the general manager, I don't know if this is where I want to be next year, and the general manager goes, okay, and it's not even like an anger thing.
I don't want you here.
It's not even like an anger thing. It's like, well, we kind of thought we could do better, and he's like, I think I can do better too. This could be like a mutual thing. It's such a look. The thing is, the one thing I wanted to make clear on this episode, because I've had the feeling all day, and I really had it over the weekend when I saw how people reacted to the non-tenders. I don't think the non-tenders are an indication the payroll is shrinking. Now, I know Ed is like, no, Jerry could do that. I just don't think that's the case. Because I believe this entire time he was going to have to artificially make room in his payroll and his budget to be able to make changes to his team, because he has not gotten a clear number. I've seen comments on some of our shows like, I can't believe you guys don't think that Chris Getz knows the exact number that he can use. When he's saying the number is fluid,
then he doesn't know.
That tells me he's been given an idea, but he's not exactly sure. It's not a hard number. If the general manager is saying that the payroll is fluid, there isn't a set thing. He may have been given an estimate. He may have been said, for now, I'm going to give you this, but I might give you more. And then in that case, you should just take, it's not really fluid. Whatever the highest number is that Jerry has given him to this point, don't believe that anything more is coming. He's going to be disappointed, right? But I just, like, when I'm reading between the lines and I'm seeing a general manager who's kind of explaining to all of you in the nicest possible way without throwing his owner under the bus, because his owner signs his checks, that they want to get better in 2026. They believe that fixing their bullpen would add a lot more wins because of the way that the bullpen performed in 2025. They really like a lot of their young players. They're not ready to move on from one of these two catchers, although every team is out there, their fan bases, thinking they're either getting Edgar Caro. I just saw one in the Phillies now think they're getting Edgar Caro. Wouldn't it be a great idea? Move on from JT Realmuto and eventually get an Edgar Caro that reminds you of JT Realmuto. I read an article about that out of Philly today.
Oh, yeah. The Phillies would be delighted, and they'd love to send Mundo Sosa.
They can't have him. And that's the thing. And I don't think that Chris Getz is looking to move him. What I'm getting from my general manager, and I could be wrong, but I've been watching this team now intently for decades, and I've been doing this show for almost a full decade, and really trying to pay attention to what's coming out of that front office. And more times than not, when we read between the lines, that turns out to be true. I think that he wants to improve his team. He wants to change some of the personnel. He wants to get better. I don't think he's got a very good number from his owner, so he needs to create room, and that's what he's doing right now. He's creating room to be able to go out and do business. And he picked up the Luis Robert Jr. option because he believes in his heart that he can get more in a return for Robert Jr. than just letting him go. And so his thing is, at some point, I'm going to move him. At some point, some team's going to value him enough. And I think he leaves. And when he leaves, the money that frees up from him is also going to be something that he's going to try to use as quickly as possible before his owner realizes he can save money on this team. I really think he's got to play like the cup game with Jerry to try to keep as much money as he possibly can to be able to do things with this team. Letting go of Mike Tauchman is saying, hey, I want to improve on this roster spot that he was taking. And I think I can go out and do it. And I don't see how you can look at the list of free agents that are out there at first base and in the corner outfield and not agree with him that he can do better, especially if he's opened up at least $20 million in his payroll if he's getting the same thing as last year, and hopefully $30 to $40 million in his payroll now that he can actually go out and do something this offseason.
Sox in the basement. Sox in the basement. Sox in the basement.
Sox in the Basement. Heard everywhere podcasts can be found, and always on soxinthebasement.com.